Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority Full Authority meeting. And it is 10 o'clock on February 9th, 2022. The meeting will be held electronically. The recording and draft minutes will be posted to KCCA's website on February 10th, 2022. And the meeting will be streamed live at the following link, which is a Facebook page for Kettle Creek. I would like now to ask for any declarations of pecuniary interest. Hearing none, because I can't see all of you on the stage right now, or on the screen. Elizabeth, do you want to just take a roll call?
Sure. Dennis Kravitz.
Here.
Dominique Giguère sent to regrets. Steve Harvey.
Here.
Jim Herbert.
Here.
Grant Jones.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
Steve Peters.
Here.
Elizabeth Caloza.
Here.
Ralph Winfield.
Here.
And the chair, Allison Warwick.
Thank you. And looking now at the agenda, we're moving on to the minutes of the meetings, the January 19th, 2022 full authority meeting. I'm looking for I can't really look because I don't have the full screen. So if I ask for a mover, just speak up, please. So look, Herbert, did you say? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Seconder?
Caloza.
Caloza. Anyone opposed? Or do you want to do the roll call? I don't think we need a roll call for minutes, do we?
We traditionally do, unless the members want to change from the roll call procedures. Kravitz?
Yeah, there we go.
I'd be in favor of the roll call. Or not doing the individual, just a vote of who's opposed, rather than doing the full roll call. I don't know if that's procedurally how we can do this.
Just because it was virtual at the beginning of the virtual meetings, we decided to do the roll call so the public knows and I know who is voting. So that's what we established.
No, I was just saying for the actual voting of passing of these minutes, do we have to do the full name call for the recorded votes?
That I believe that's what's set up in the admin bylaw.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's do the roll call.
Okay, go ahead.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Caloza,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Warwick,
Yes.
and that passes.
Excellent. Now moving on to the correspondence, we have a letter from Conservation Authority to Christopher Freeland, support for the environmental and economic sustainability of the Great Lakes, and that the recommendation is that the correspondence be received. Any comments about the correspondence before we move on?
Madam Chair, I have one other piece of correspondence that we received yesterday. So it wasn't included in the advance package. This is an email from Kristen Corrigal at the ministry advising that they have gone out to advertise for agricultural representatives for participation at each of the CAs. So the advertisement has now been posted and they're accepting applications until February 21st, 2022. If you recall with the updates to the Conservation Authorities Act, you can just go to the next screen, Marianne. The agricultural reps could be appointed by the minister at his or her choosing. This is the advertisement that is now online. The individual needs to be a resident of a participating municipality within the CA's jurisdiction and have knowledge and experience in the agricultural sector. They're looking at a 4-year term and they have posted the remuneration for this appointee as $150 per diem. If you're aware, our members actually receive $86 per diem. We do have confirmation from Conservation Ontario through the ministry that the ministry says that they are paying that per diem. However, it will raise questions in terms of fairness, in terms of the compensation for all board members across the board. So I continue to seek clarification from the ministry, and we'll be updating you as we go forward with this process. Next slide. Again, as you recall, this was a new element of the Conservation Authorities Act. The minister may appoint an agricultural sector representative to the board. They are limited on the voting that they can do at the board. So the member appointed shall not have a vote on a resolution to enlarge the authority, amalgamate authority, dissolve the authority, or any budgetary matter. So again, I'm investigating what this means and how it will play out, and we'll bring further information to the board as we proceed. Right now, I would advise if you know of someone with a good agricultural background who would be interested in this position, to encourage them to apply.
Okay, any other questions about the correspondence as presented? Just speak up because I can't see the whole screen if you do. If not, can I have a mover to receive the correspondence? Peters, and seconded by Kravitz, and go ahead and do the roll call whenever you're ready, Elizabeth.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you. Now we're moving on to the statement of revenue and expenses, and I believe A is 2021 draft audited financial statements, and I believe that's your report, Elizabeth.
Yes, so I just have a brief preamble from the staff. The audit occurred during the week of January 24th to 28th by Graham Scott Enns. Despite a wet year and a late start, we had a successful year end with the $9,400 positive year end position, mainly due to the successful season in the campgrounds. There were no push and pulls from the operating reserves, but there is insufficient funds available in the wage subsidy reserve to undertake that salary and pay equity review as planned. And the surplus funds from the campgrounds were pushed to the infrastructure capital reserve to prepare for a tangible capital asset purchases in 2022 and what is projected over the next 5 years. I would like to welcome to the meeting Jim Frederick. He's the partner at Graham Scott Enns, and Scott Trevors, who's the senior manager at Graham Scott Enns and oversaw the audit for us. And if with the permission of the chair, they would like to present the draft audited statements.
Whenever they're ready.
Okay, so I'm up now. Okay, so hello and good morning. I guess for those who don't know me, my name's Scott Trevors, and I'm a senior manager at Graham Scott Enns, as Elizabeth stated. And on me with the presentation is also Jim Frederick. He's the partner at the firm as well, Graham Scott Enns. So I will be briefly going over the audited financial statements like I do every year for December 31st, 2021 for the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, which will consist of an auditor's report, financial statements, and the financial statement notes and schedules. Okay, so we'll just scroll down to the auditor's report. Keep going down there. There we go. Stop right there. Oh, back up to the first page there. Okay. So the auditor's report's broken down into a few sections, which I'll go over. So the first section of the auditor's report is our opinion, which outlines what we audited, that being the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements, and then kind of expands on our opinion. So our audit opinion this year is that we issued an unqualified opinion on these statements, financial statements, and that our audit concluded the financial statements were free from material misstatement. So I'll just read aloud that opinion, which is the first 2 paragraphs there, okay? So we have audited the financial statements of Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, which comprise a statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2021, the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, statement of changes in net financial assets, and the statement of cash flows for the year that ended, and notes to the financial statements, including some of significant accounting policies. And then in our opinion, the organization's financial statement presents fairly in all material respects the financial position of the organization as at December 31st, 2021, and the results of its operations and cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Okay, so that would be our opinion, and then the next section there is our basis for opinion, which outlines that we conducted our audit in accordance with the applicable Canadian auditing standards. Further sections, next part there's responsibilities of management and those charged with governance of the financial statements, which outlines the responsibilities of management and those who charge with the governance, which is the board, which is to say that the financial statements, notes, and controls are appropriate to reflect the transactions and our management responsibility. The next section gets into the auditor's responsibility for the audit of the statement. This kind of moves on to the next page as well. This section outlines a little bit of what an audit is and what we're looking to obtain a reasonable assurance that the statements are free from material misstatement, and that we will communicate any deficiencies or finding to those charged with the governance of the board, which is the board. So the final section at the bottom would be where we're going to sign and date that. It's dated today, but I believe they're approved at the AGM, so we'll update that when that happens. Okay. So that's our auditor's report. So scrolling down to the next page, which is our statement of financial position, which shows the authority's assets and liabilities at December 31st, 2021, with the comparative figures at December 31st, 2022 or 2020, sorry. Broken out into like financial assets. So what we are, near cash investments and receivables of 1.6 million, total liabilities amounts that we owe at December 31st, 2021, 855,000 for net financial assets of 781,000. And then we have our non-financial assets, which is things aren't convertible to cash. So anything that's tangible like TCA and prepaids and inventory at about 3.1 million. So the total of all these net assets over liabilities gives us an accumulated surplus of 3.9. Okay. You'll see that some of these notes have some of those numbers have notes and pages attached to them, which will provide further explanation and clarification of those figures. So we'll go over those when we run through those. Keep scrolling down, please. So here's our next page is the statement of operations and accumulated surplus for the full year ended December 31st, 2021, with a comparative budget and the 2020 figures as well. So these are broken into revenues by type of $2.4 million, and then expenditures by program or segment of very close to the revenue, $2.4 million, showing that's surplus of about $9,000. Okay. Keep scrolling down, Marianne. So here's our statement of changes in net assets. Okay, the statement just reconciles our surplus back to the net financial assets. So what's convertible to cash, it shows how the surplus is impacted by the change in capital items. Keep scrolling down. There's a statement of cash flows, which shows the inflows and outflows by source. So we have our operating, our capital, and our financing activities to finance those capital assets. So we have a net change in cash of $88,000 to give us 1.5 million in cash and investments. Scrolling down, please. So now we get into the notes to the financial statements. So with all financial statements, there's a notes explaining how the entity reports its accounting transactions and explanations or clarifications of the numbers presented in the financial statements. We start at the top with our summary of significant accounting policies. And the financial statements tell the users what the estimates are, how revenue is reported, classification, keep scrolling down, please. Classification of expenditures into the segments, reserves, what our reserves are, tangible capital assets, how we recognize those and amortize those. And again, these are just accounting policies under PSAB standards that explain to our users how we report our transactions. Okay, and there's no changes or updates to these standards from the prior year. Okay, and then we get into more of our notes that explain what's happening this year. So a lot of these notes are either related to standards that we have to put the information in there, or to benefit the users. There's things the users like to put additional information in. So note 2, just going down, outlines who the municipal levies came from. Note 3 is our short-term investments, where we have that invest in high interest bank account, our credit facility, which shows that the authority does have available line of credit, our pension plans, which we have a defined contribution benefit plan. So our budgeted figures, which reconcile our approved budget to the financial statement budget that's presented. Some items in your approved budget, such as reserve transfers and such, are not revenue on the statement of operations. under the PSAB standards. Donated services, we'd like to say that some of our services are donated and we can't put a value on those. Deferred revenues, so obviously these are items we've received that we haven't spent the money yet, or expenditures have not been incurred. Scrolling down, accumulated surplus, this is where we outline of that 3.9 surplus, how we've allocated it internally to our reserves and our capital assets. Note 10 is our government assistance note, which is to do with emergency wage subsidy, which most of that's from last year. Scrolling down, our supplemental information, which outlines current expenditures by object. So you'll note on the financial statements themselves, statement of operations, it's expenses by segment. This just kind of shows by summary by object. So wages, materials, amortization. Note 12 is our related party with the trust. And then of course our standard note with the economic risk associated with the pandemic. And then there's probably page 14 to 18, I believe, is or I guess more detail of what's in each segment. So keep going down here, reserve administration, and then it kind of outlines the campgrounds. Keep going down, and then kind of all the other different programs that we provide. Same as we read those. Keeps going down, and then we kind of get into the last two pages are our TCA, our tangible capital assets. We've showed our opening, what we've added in the year, any write-offs and the related amortization. Okay, again, there's no new notes that were added this year or policies. So these are just updated for this year's transactions. Okay, so again, although I didn't go into too much detail, because it's more of a management discussion, it should be noted there were no adjustments or discrepancies with management from the results and the figures previously presented to the board. So these, I believe everybody has copies of these, so the board would have had an opportunity to review these before we presented them. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, these are the draft audited statements. It's an opportunity for the board to look over them if they have any significant questions for the auditors. And then we will take them back and present the final ones for your approval at the annual general meeting.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Scott, for that presentation. Members, any questions regarding this draft statements? Hearing none, I think the campground was good news for sure, that that revenue was there. So that's kind of a nice relief, but I don't hear any questions. So if you want to move on to the audit planning and finding letters, and I believe that's Scott and Jim again.
Yeah, those, Madam Chair, if I may, those were included in the advanced package. So basically today what we would be looking for is a motion that the board accept the staff report on the draft audited financial statements and for staff to execute the audit planning and finding letters.
Okay, and then would C be included in that motion too? The draft financial,
yes.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
So looking for a motion to accept A, B, and C and to,
Jones.
okay, second. I heard Mackie at the end there, so I'll go with that. And Elizabeth, if you don't mind doing the roll call, that would be great.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
great, thank you. And again, thanks Scott for your, and Jim for your time today. And I think that concludes that portion. So moving on to new business. A, the consultation guide, phase 2 regulations. And Elizabeth, this is all yours.
Thank you. So the phase 2 regulations were a consultation guide to the phase 2 regulations was distributed on January 26th. This guide, they're looking for, they posted it to the environmental registry for a 30-day consultation period. And so we have until February 25th to prepare a submission for any comments that we have on this consultation guide on the next set of regulations for the Conservation Authorities Act. So I thought I'd give you a brief overview of the consultation guide to date. We continue to meet with Conservation Ontario and other CAs to discuss the guide, and Conservation Ontario will be preparing draft comments back to the ministry on this consultation guide. I hope to share that with you at the AGM and prepare our own submission to the province on comments back, and you'll have the opportunity to review that at the annual general meeting in advance of that February 25th deadline. Next slide. So this consultation guide basically deals with four main buckets. The municipal levies regulation, which looks at regulations governing the apportionment of municipal levy as well as the budget process. The second section looks at costs for specified municipalities related to the Clean Water Act. The third bucket looks at fees and the ability of CAs to charge fees for different services. And the fourth bucket is looking again more at increasing Conservation Authority transparency. The related provisions of the CEI Act will be proclaimed when phase 2 regulations is finalized, and there's no guidance really within the consultation guide on when we can expect the phase 2 regulations to be released. The second, moving ahead. So just to give some further information, many of the elements remain the same. So a lot of the elements of this regulation, I think, basically are virtually how we're doing business to date, but they expand the scope to those three buckets of programs and services. So the mandatory category 2 and category 3. One major thing that stays the same is that we still have three ways to apportion the levy, and that's by modified current value assessment, by agreement between the CAs and member municipalities, or as determined by benefit to the member municipalities. And there remains two voting methods for the CA board, weighted vote, which is based on a pay for say principle, where your vote is weighed according to the percentage of municipal levy paid, and the one member, one vote. Each member's vote counts equally regardless of the levy apportionment. Next slide. So the municipal levies regulation, just some key pullouts from there. That speaks to the draft annual budget of the CAs and asks the CA and participating municipalities to coordinate and communicate timelines and expectations for the levy and budget, and that the CA posts the draft budget on the CA website for public access. Notifications of the meeting, again, we currently do this. A minimum of 30 days notice is sent to the member municipalities of the meeting where the CAA will decide on the levy component of the annual budget, and that this should be accompanied by a CA draft budget and financial information. Something new under the notification of meetings is that this notice must provide a summary of how the CA considered opportunities for self-generated revenue. I would say that our budget kind of already details that. I think it's quite clear which programs are generating revenue. But they're specifically asking CAs to do this moving forward for their member municipalities. The municipal levy vote will be approved by a weighted majority. Again, that's the same as what we're currently doing. The overall budget vote may be approved by weighted vote or one member, one vote method. Traditionally, we have done both the budget vote and the municipal vote by weighted vote. And the final budget, the CA is to circulate a copy of the final approved budget to the minister. That is something new to the participating municipalities, and publish the final version on the CA website. Next slide. For the levy apportionment approaches, again, quite similar to what we're already doing. So you remember the category mandatory programs and services. They're saying that the operating expenses that apply to all participating municipalities would be apportioned using the modified current value assessment. So basically what we're doing right now, and that the operating expenses that apply to only one or some municipalities may be apportioned by agreement or is determined on the basis of benefit. And the capital cost can use any three of the apportionment methods. Category 2 and 3 programs and services can use any 3 of the apportionment methods as set out in the agreements that will be negotiated with the member municipalities. And corporate administrative costs, the ministry is saying that the administrative costs not related to any specific program or service, so the general overhead of the authority, do not require MOUs or agreements. They can be included in those mandatory costs and apportioned using the modified value assessment method. And the only thing new I would say there is that we've been asked to include those costs in a detailed standalone manner so that the municipalities know exactly what our corporate administrative costs are. Next slide. Amount owed by specified municipalities. This was a regulation to determine the amounts owed by municipalities designated under the Clean Water Act. It would appear that this is only applying to municipalities that are not a participating municipality of a CA under the Conservation Authorities Act. And so it's a way for CAs who are undertaking Clean Water Act programs and services for non-member municipalities to recoup some of those costs, and it can be apportioned by any one of the 3 methods. Next slide. The fee class policy basically sets out that the programs and services must be listed by the minister for a CA to charge a fee. So there will be a list of programs and services that is released by the minister. And then the CA can charge a fee on any of those programs and services. The fee would be based on a user pay principle. And any category 2 and 3 programs that require an agreement must also stipulate how user fees are being, what user fees are applied to those category 2 and 3. And the new thing here, I think, is that a fee policy must be developed. Next slide. The transparency section, again, a lot of these things, I think the Conservation Authority is already covering off, but some we will certainly add. It really speaks to establishing a governance section on every Conservation Authority website that would include the following things: the Conservation Authority members and contact information, authority bylaws, draft and final budgets, any category 2 or 3 agreements, a meeting schedule, and any other governance documents such as strategic plans are to be included on that website section as well. And if members recall, we've already started this. We have what we have called a CA Act section of the website where we're posting our inventory of programs and services in our transition plan, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. So the next steps on this consultation guide, again, staff continue to review it. The ministry has had a number of sessions. I think there's another one tomorrow at 9 o'clock. If you're interested in attending, I can certainly get you that information. We'll be consulting with other CAs and with Conservation Ontario, and I'll bring back a draft letter for your review for comments that we would put into the ministry on this consultation guide. There's not a lot that I see as red flags in here. I think there's a lot of flexibility in this regulation, and it really restates a lot of the things that we're already undertaking as a CA.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Now, members of the board, any questions regarding the presentation we just saw? And again,
Peter?
just speak up. Yep, go ahead.
Thanks. It was a question I was going to ask earlier, and when I see this slide that's in front of us right now, transparency and governance. So this new agricultural representative that's going to come on, are they going to be bound by all the same rules and regulations that we are as far as respecting confidentiality? Is the ag rep, as an example, going to participate in closed session items? That's my question. Thanks.
Steve, I think all of those questions are shared by the CAs, and those questions are being brought to the minister's attention for clarification. We weren't given a heads up really that they were moving ahead with naming these CA with the agricultural reps. So we're working with Conservation Ontario basically to get a list of questions up to the minister and get some answers. But I'll certainly include those questions.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it came that early as well. I kind of thought it would go with the next cycle as far as going with the boards rather than having somebody join. I guess unless they're joining at the beginning of the year, but not really sure. It's still one of those things where they've put out that recommendation, but we're not really sure how it all falls into place. Any other questions? Okay, then we have a recommendation to accept this for information.
Herbie.
Yeah, seconder.
Winfield.
Great, thanks, Ralph. And you can call the vote whenever you're ready, Elizabeth.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
Yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
thank you. Now moving on to B, inventory of programs and services. And Elizabeth, it's you.
So this is a second look at the programs, the inventory of programs and services. As you remember, last month, we brought it forward to you and got a motion to circulate it out to the municipal staff. It was circulated on January 22nd and inviting feedback from municipal staff by February 3rd. 6 out of 7 of the member municipalities staff provided comment. There was not any major concerns. I think one consistent one was looking for clarification on consistencies between the CAs and the municipality's jurisdiction. And that will be something that will need more consultation and discussion as we move forward. The City of London staff are in receipt of the programs and services, but would have just asked for the opportunity to review the inventories of all of the other CAs in their jurisdiction before they provide any comment. However, the inventory must be submitted to the minister by February 28th, 2022. Just as a reminder to the members, we want to meet that deadline, but we're very much conscious that this inventory is a living document and will change over time as we get more information. It seems to be released regularly and updated accordingly. Next slide. So this is just that summary of programs and services by category. Again, the category 1 is mandatory. Category 2 is services municipality is asking us to undertake. And category 3, what we feel is advisable in our jurisdiction. In terms of next steps, we'll want to look towards the finalization of phase 2 regulations. I think it will inform how we shape our budget moving forward and the different categorization of the programs and services, especially as it relates to the administrative costs. So we'll build budget. The next thing we'll want to do and have further discussion with the board. The items that have a little red square beside them, so low water response, the inventory of Conservation Authority owned lands, the conservation area strategy, and the core watershed-based resource management strategy. Those are the elements that are mandatory but are new and don't have a 2022 budget. And so we'll need to be looking at those and coming up with costing and a work plan together with the board for those deliverables moving forward and to meet that 2024 deadline to have them in place. We'll be reviewing our existing agreements for compliance to the various regulations that are being released and working towards garnering support with our member municipalities for those 2 category 3 programs and services that we would like to continue with existing municipal levy. That's the watershed monitoring and the tree planting programs. So with the permission of the board today and the approval, we'd like to submit the inventory of programs and services to the ministry as is and circulate it out to the member councils. We'd certainly, in circulating the inventory at this time, look to municipal staff to advise KCCA if they would like a formal presentation of the inventory and the process as is to councils at this time, knowing that we don't have all the answers to, I'm sure, all the questions that councils will have, but just want to keep that line of communication open with our member municipalities as we move forward to the next stage of negotiating those agreements.
All right, well, once again, thanks, Elizabeth, for getting all this done in a timely fashion. It's a lot of extra work, I know, that you have to keep moving on with this. Members, any questions regarding the timeline and inventory that's presented to us? Seeing none, then there is a recommendation in front of us that the inventory be approved to, oh, look at this right in front of me. Look, I don't even have to read it. Mover for that?
Herbert.
Okay, seconder.
Jones.
Okay, Jones, and so call the vote, please, Elizabeth.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
great, thank you. So moving on to C, the draft 2022 budget. And Elizabeth?
So again, the draft 2022 budget was circulated out to members and our member municipalities, inviting questions. There was no questions or comments received back from our member municipalities. The draft that was put in the advanced package, there's just some small adjustments and additions were made to the budget in the latest version, but they did not affect the levy. And the 2021 actuals are now included in the draft for comparison. So again, this is just a last look at the draft for members, and we'll look for a final approval of the budget at the AGM in a couple of weeks.
Okay, great. Questions, anybody? Pretty quiet, so I guess I'm looking now for a mover.
Mackey. Herbie.
Mackey and Harvey, and you can call the vote when you're ready, Elizabeth.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Pelosa,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes,
and that motion passes.
great. All right, and then moving on to 2022. Okay, we have an acronym, which is WECI, which I guess is Water and Erosion Control, which is not, we don't want to say WikiLeaks because that would not be good. So I think that is Jennifer's report. So I'll let her go ahead with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're right, WECI. Yeah, it's February, so it's a WECI application time. Seems we're doing this quite a few times in the last few years. As you may be aware, WECI is a provincial government funding program that provides 50% funding for projects related to dams and erosion control structures, for safety projects, repairs, and studies. This year, we are seeking board approval to submit 2 WECI applications, one for concrete repairs, which is phase 2, so the construction part of the concrete repairs at Dalewood Dam, and also a safety repair at Dalewood Dam to replace the safety grates over the log gains in the dam. There's no guarantee, obviously, that these projects will be funded. However, we do have budget impact for both those projects will not exceed $113,000 with WECI support of 50%. The WECI committee will be meeting by the end of February to discuss projects that have been submitted, and hopefully we will be successful.
Any questions for Jennifer?
Question, Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
to the Jennifer. On the safety repair for the safety grates, if that isn't ever done, are they gonna, is it a problem that it's not done right away, or could they last for 3 or 4 years, or something that is just a thing notice that should be done?
To Jim through Madam Chair.
Yep.
Safety grates, I should have mentioned this before, safety projects are automatically approved. So this project should be approved to be done this year. According to the inspection report that was done in 2018, those safety grates are good for the next 3 to 5 years. However, it is something that we would like to get replaced. It'll make it easier for accessing the log games and making it safer for operators.
So something needs to be done now. So thank you. I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I don't hear anything. So we have a recommendation that staff prepare applications to the Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Program for concrete repairs to the Dalewood Dam, and a second application for safety grate repairs to the Dalewood Dam with a total impact for both projects not to exceed 113,000, with WECI supporting 50%. So looking for a mover.
I so move, Ralph.
Winfield, and second it.
Jones.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none. Elizabeth, when you're ready, if you can call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Palooza,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And now moving on to E, February Planning and Regulations Report, and this is Joe's report. So welcome, Joe, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking for a board motion to receive the Planning and Regulations Activity Report that was in the advanced package. Just since the short period between the last meeting, there's not a lot of activity there, but we just continue to report on our progress.
Okay, any questions for Joe?
No, but moved by Kravitz.
Okay, seconder.
Peters.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder, and when you're ready, Elizabeth, you can call the vote.
Kravitz,
Yes. Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Palooza,
yes,
Winfield,
Yes.
Warwick.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
So moved. So next on the agenda, we have a closed session. We will be moving into closed for the reasons that we will be discussing identifiable person or potential litigation or legal matter. And so a mover to go into closed.
Harvey.
Seconder,
Herbert.
and we can call the vote whenever you're ready.
Kravitz,
Yes.
Harvey,
Yes.
Herbert,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Palooza,
yes.
Winfield,
Yes.
and Warwick.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Great. So just let us know when we're off Facebook.